C-Level. My guest today is Liam Casey, founder and CEO of PCH International. Liam's also been known as Mr. China to certain people. Before we start, Liam, give me a short introduction to yourself and your background, and perhaps a little bit about PCH International and the business model there.
Great, Phil. Thank you. Yeah, originally from Ireland, and probably have spent more time in Ireland in the last since March than I have in many, many years. So started PCH in '96, originally as a sourcing company where we were actually source product from China for OEMs and CMs around the world. Evolved into product design, developing product development, packaging, sourcing, supply chain services, logistics, with a big focus on visibility right throughout the supply chain. I think when we work with companies, and we've learned over the years, we work with companies, we look for three things. They have to be passionate about design, they have to be passionate about their brand, and they have to be passionate about the consumer experience. And they're the kind of things that we look for in a company that really wants to compete in today's world. Because if they are passionate about those things, they care about good design, they care about their brand, they care about the consumer experience, they're going to want to know all the things that happen in a supply chain, right throughout the supply chain. They want to make sure they're managing the supply chain in a way that's required for today's world, where the consumers have a high expectation. And so we run that entire supply chain for them when we work with them. It's only when we find those three things do we find that, you know, we can add value. That's a big focus for us.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Because when you think about it, by doing what you're doing, you enable them to focus very heavily on those three things, and you know, you can take care of the back end. Being passionate about design, part of that is you have some kind of incubator or accelerator strategies. You have design offices, and tell me a little bit about that before we get into the pandemic talk.
Yeah, I think when you look back and you look at supply chain, the way it's evolved over the last 20 years, it's you know, I'd spent some time in the fashion industry in my very early years, and it was really interesting. I noticed that I'd go to a factory where a piece of fabric is being cut, and the last minute, with the designer, you could actually change the actual look and feel of a garment, right? And you could do it the last minute before the product was just cut. And when I went into the tech world, what I saw was, hang on a second, there's technology roadmaps, there's product roadmaps. There was no way for people to be innovative like that or be creative like that. You know, it was so set in stone. Then I think around 2007 and 8, we saw, like, you know, stuff like Arduino, and later was Raspberry Pi, but you saw like open source software, you saw like 3D printing. All of a sudden, the fabrics of technology had changed, and now you could actually be creative. You could go there with a designer or an entrepreneur, last minute, or you know, they could hack together something, and you actually get the prototype of what a product could look like. And it was our world was all about, like, how do you make that flexible? How do you create an environment so that all they need to do is be creative and come up with ideas for products? And then you know, that was 2007 and 8, and we saw a flood of, like, people, you know, in that downturn where, you know, you looked at the factories in China and you had spare capacity, so the factories were getting innovative and creative. And you looked at the Western world, you saw where the big companies were letting people go, and so engineers were actually spending time in their garages, and they were trying prototyping and hacking together stuff with an Arduino, with 3D printing, and with open source software. And they were coming up with very good prototypes. So we said, oh, wow, we better embrace this. And we did, right? But what happened was there was chaos in the market. It was like everyone was coming up with an idea for a product. And then you had crowdfunding as well, which drove it crazy, because somebody would come up with a great prototype, but there was nothing behind it. And, you know, they'd raise millions of dollars and then had no idea on how to develop and how to build a product. So that's when we created Highway 1. And we created Highway 1 because we wanted to create a controlled environment that we could actually help some of these entrepreneurs and filter out what would work and what wouldn't work. And that's been that was a huge success. If you look at today, I mean, it was one of the companies during the pandemic raised $100 million. Q Medical down in San Diego, they raised $100 million. They got about a 400 or 500 million valuation or something, and they've come up with a test for COVID. It's a phenomenal company. Likewise, you look at Molecule in San Francisco. Again, it's the air purifier. Again, phenomenal product. Again, I think they're massive valuations at the moment. So I mean, there's some great companies came out of it, but it was, for us, it created it was a way to create, and we created a class which had a proper pedagogy. Like we brought people in for 4 months, and we've changed, we've evolved. Now we're looking for we're looking at later stage companies that we know have a product that can go to market, and that they can actually, they can take advantage of our services in a faster way.
Yeah, I mean, that's really exciting, Liam. When I actually did I lived in Guadalajara in Mexico for a while, and I spent some time at Plug and Play Mexico. They just opened a new place there, and I was doing a bit of mentoring, mainly on marketing, but also on supply chain. I was amazed how little people knew about how to get hardware manufactured, and how little they knew what they didn't know. And that was the biggest challenge. They thought because they'd got someone with a materials degree, they could take care of supply chain. So I think that was an eye opener for me, but also just the way they thought about business models and how that could be developed. And I just found it really exciting to be amongst all those innovators and be able to share some real world experience with them. But the energy you get from them is quite spectacular, isn't it? It's an exciting environment to be in.
But again, and also, I mean, again, in our world, we were always looking for, where's the risk in the model, and where's how do you eliminate that? And so we found that anything you can do to reduce the time to market was key. Time was the number one currency. So bringing down any of those barriers to entry was so important. And sometimes, there was so much focus put, because you look at the people that start these companies, mostly they're engineers, some of them are entrepreneurs, but they're a combination, and you're trying to find, okay, how do you get them to be commercial? And it's how do you, the one thing we found was that they were coming to us with they had worked in large companies where they had warehouses, distribution centers all over the world. And one entrepreneur came to me and said, current company I work with, we have 250 global distribution centers. And I said, that model is not going to work for you. And very quickly, I just took out a pen and said, look, hey, you're going to put 1,000 pieces in each warehouse. You're going to have product that's going to be sitting there, and you're not sure you're going to sell it. I said, look at the working capital required to fill that.
The size of your risk.
And so very quickly, and he said, but we operate an 8 mile last mile. I said, you don't need an 8 mile last mile. You need an 8,000 mile last mile. And that's what we operate. It's from the production line to our fulfillment center, direct to consumers. And in doing that, you reduce the working capital in an enormous way. And so we've convinced so many of them that is the right way to go, and it allows them to get the product to market.
Yeah, and to get it there much faster, and to get it there with much less friction, certainly for them. I just want to switch gear, and we'll kind of get back to the business model a little bit as we go, but I want to switch gear and talk a little bit about the pandemic. And, when I started doing this EMS at Sea Level series, I think we were back in May, and we were talking about the 2 or 3 months. Now we're almost talking about half a year. And because you're so active in Asia, I'm guessing you were ahead of the curve in terms of, spotting what was going on and getting that level of preparedness underway. Talk me through your experiences of this year and what that's meant to you and your customers.
I guess, one of the things, I think we were fortunate, we understood China, and we understood a little bit, but we'd spent a lot of time there. We'd been there through SARS, and our people on the ground are really strong. And we'd seen what happened during SARS. And one of the things about Asia in general, I think they have a very healthy respect for viruses. So when something happens, they get very tight on it. They kind of zone in and manage it as fast as possible. So we saw that, I think we closed for Chinese New Year on January 23rd. We were supposed to open on the 29th of January. We didn't open until the 13th of February. And there was very tight restrictions around the opening. We had to have like proper sanitization right throughout the building. We had to have like masks and proper PPE anywhere there was workers, and temperature monitoring on the way in and out of the building. So having, and we had never sourced masks before, but we had to do it for the production team. So we had to source quite a large, what we thought then was a large volume. And the team were like, we have a big sourcing team, so it was very, they went and they did some work, and we have like, we had no experience in PPE, but we had a very strong process. We understood how to find factories, we understood how to audit factories, we understood how to audit the process, and we understood how to, to interpret the quality requirements and to, see what was available in the production facilities. That allowed us to source very quickly, and then we saw some of the companies who were sourcing, and some of them were struggling to source, and we ended up, I think our first order, we actually said, okay, there's an opportunity here to help companies, and the first order I think we got was from UCSF, which was Mark Benioff's Salesforce organization. We're managing it for UCSF in California. And again, when I had the conversation with them, because I mean, we knew some of the people who were working in the organization, and we said, look, our focus here is like, we'd seen massive price gouging going on in the industry. You'd seen like, in every step of the process, it was like, whether it was the production, whether it was the trading companies involved, whether it was the quality approvals and certification processes, and then you saw the logistics. Logistics went from $3 a kg to like $30 a kg overnight. It was just ridiculous, and there was no capacity available. And so we said, look, and there was massive profiteering and opportunistic stuff in the business. Whereas we said, look, no, we're going to take our sourcing group, we're going to get them to focus on PPE, and we're going to run as we would run any part of the business. We're going to ensure that it's it's a commercial piece of business for us, but that it's like, the aim was to be the most competitive in the industry, to be the most competitive in anywhere we priced product or sold product, and we achieved that. So we went to UCSF, and we took, I think, 30% off their first price of what they were paying for masks. And we delivered something like 20 million masks to them in a very short period of time. Then, we saw around the world, we saw, wow, there's other opportunities. There was other companies or regions that were looking for help as well. And out of nowhere, I mean, we got a call from the YouTube guys from Bono. He said, look, hey,
Bono.
He said, we're making a donation to the health service in Ireland, and we really want to have an impact there, and we think that if we can supply product, it would be good. And I've met him the times before, so we knew each other. He had an idea of what we did, and he knew we have a strong presence on the ground in China, and he has access to everybody. Anyone in the world, whether it's Jack Ma or whoever, he had access to everybody. But he saw that he wanted to make sure the quality was good. And for us, the first thing was ensuring that the quality was right, certifications were right, and the product performed.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I look at it from Bono's point of view. It's interesting that he was taking so much care of that rather than just throwing money at the situation. And that's impressive from that point of view. But from your point of view, and I know I had a chat with Mike McNamara on this. It's not just about sourcing the product. A lot of it is about shipping those products around the world. And I think you were taking the opportunity of airliners that perhaps weren't flying with passengers and actually filling seats with PPE. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So what happened was, again, we were able to source the product. The first thing was we were able to find great factories that were sourcing the product. And again, I think what people didn't understand was that the scale that China had was just so big. And so then we were able to find the product, no problem, and source it, and we were able to get it to like the, you know, the airports, or, you know, to the seaport, to Shenzhen or Shenzhen or Guangzhou. We were no problem doing that. But then the problem was, like, customs was taking like 4 or 5 days to get it through. And for us, it was really confusing, because normally we'd do it the same day, and we were kind of like confused, why is it taking so long? But it was actually, it was the mechanism that China put in place to ensure quality and to slow things down, to make sure that the quality of the product was going out was good, because China was really upset that its reputation was being damaged with some of the, you know, the product that was being shipped into different geographies where it was being rejected. And it was being rejected because it was a different understanding of standards of the product. So that became a real bottleneck. So we had to get, you know, real control of that. So we worked with some of our logistics, like customs clearance companies that we work with normally. We worked with them in the airports, and we kind of ensure that we had the right process. We were very fortunate. With one of our people on our team had worked in the airline industry in the past, and he had very good contacts into some of the airlines, and he was able to negotiate with some of the carriers. We watched who was loading product in the different airports coming out of China. We saw the planes who were leaving. And online, you can easily see what planes are going. So he went to the airlines that he knew, and we negotiated a contract with Finnair. I think for a while we became Finnair's largest client. So we were picking up at 9 o'clock in the morning in Shenzhen or Guangzhou, mostly Guangzhou, and we were landing it into Dublin at 6 p.m. in the evening in the same day. And I think we were getting, we had A350s and A330s. I think we took out a 777 from Ethiopian Airlines on one stage. But it was really, I mean, it was that coordination. And then once it landed on the ground, we had the clearance guys, to get it cleared through customs and get it delivered. We were delivering it within, like, from when it was leaving Shenzhen to getting it delivered within 24 hours. Actually, within about 18 hours, I think, was the total door to door.
Yeah,
which is like,
that's amazing.
Yeah, unbelievable. And it kind of, you know, it was a great exercise for everyone in the organization, that you could see, wow, you could create these cycles like really, really fast. I think by about plane 6, I think we were like, wow, okay, this is working. It's a process.
This is humming. Yeah.
And then it was, but then you had, like, you still had a lot of the customs challenges from time to time. And the thing is, we had Bono looking over our shoulder all the time, making sure for his, you know, I think first 10 shipments for them or something. And he, I mean, you're right. I mean, he cared about this stuff, and he was right. But again, for us, our purpose is developing partnerships, delivering peace of mind.
Yeah.
So, you know, nobody in the company would question anything. Like, if they saw something wrong, they would question it straight away. So anything around quality, everyone would, if somebody said, hey, stop, the whole organization will stop, and no one will question it. Because if we thought something was wrong, we'd say, hey, okay, it's not going to work. The last thing we wanted was a product to go onto our front line where the doctor or the nurse on that front line didn't have peace of mind. So for us, that was the big focus. And it was so easy to point the organization, the whole company, towards this challenge and this problem, and get everybody on board. And again, we just used the very same process that we would have for a component PCB.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I wanted to ask you about. Did you feel like this is like the ultimate test for my business model? This is what we were, you know, this is what we built these procedures and these processes and this team to do, to actually, you know, source stuff when it was needed and when it was needed urgently, to deliver it where it was needed, to make sure the quality was right. These are all the factors that you kind of built PCH International for, and you got to, I guess, really test it in the most aggressive way possible.
Absolutely. And like, it was great, you know, I mean, when I was talking to Mike during the process, you know, it was like, he was just like, you know, so supportive and saying, look, hey, if you can do this, this is what you got to do. And we really explained to everybody, look, you know, we have a sourcing team. That's what we do. We're able to source product. We have, like, every product we touch, we ensure that the quality is right. So it was a perfect test and a perfect fit for us. And it worked. And the cycles were so short and so fast, and the pressure was so fast. Again, ensuring that you had the quality was always the number one thing.
Yeah,
and that's a huge success.
Yeah, and obviously a big success on the PPE. So did you get involved at all in the whole kind of standing up production for ventilators or any other medical equipment,
No,
test stuff, that
we
kind of thing?
no, we stayed away from. We said okay, because for us, it all came down to what's the ask, can we meet the
Mm,
ask, and if the ask was
yeah,
vague, if the customer didn't know what they want, then it was like,
yeah,
and somebody
mm,
come to us saying that they wanted like a $30,000 ventilator, and you're saying, yeah, okay, it's made in the west of Ireland because 50% of the global demand or global ventilators were made in Ireland at that time.
uh-huh,
And so, I mean, going to try and replicate that in China at the time just didn't make sense.
yeah,
Now, there were
yeah,
very good, there were some really good vendors of ventilators there, but again, they had their sales channels. And again,
mm,
for us, unless there was a real value add and we knew we could add
yeah,
value, there was no
yeah,
point in playing in the space. And again,
absolutely.
we were successful in reducing the pricing across all the lines of products which we
Yeah.
put in place.
Yeah, frontline PPE, absolutely essential. So when you look at the whole process, we've kind of gone through the what I consider to be the urgent stage, the short-term stage, and we're kind of going into this medium, what I would think of as more the important stage. So the urgent being overtaken by the important. We're still in a bit firefighting mode because we're having second waves and there's all kind of stuff
Mm.
happening. But hopefully we've got, particularly in supply chain processes, in to deal with that. How do you see that short, medium, and perhaps longer term in terms of the impact for your business, but also for the industry as a whole?
I think so. I mean, if you look at, say, just on the PPE piece alone, it's really interesting. I mean, I haven't got the exact numbers, but I know that PPE was not a large export category for China pre-COVID. So January, it just wasn't. It wasn't a big category. Um, what happened was the whole world turned to China for capacity and for production because scale, because they had the experience doing it for themselves, but they also created a massive industry out of it. And you look at companies like, say, BYD, first week of February, they'd never made a mask. I think today they're making like somewhere in the region of 100 million masks a day. Now,
Wow.
you're not going to get that scale. I haven't seen that anywhere else in the world that has the ability for that kind of scale.
Mm,
So what happened, and one of the things that we were hearing continuously throughout the process from the people in the purchasing, were saying, oh, it's going to get back to pre-COVID soon. And we're saying, very quick, we realized there is no such thing as pre-COVID pricing.
yeah.
Pre-COVID pricing is history. It's going to go way below pre-COVID pricing because now the capacity that's being brought into the market and the volume that's available, um, it's going to become far cheaper.
Mm,
And it's and that has happened. So the pricing has
yeah.
completely collapsed. And I would worry, unless governments in the Western world or in other regions are going to subsidize the production, the product coming out of China today the quality is proven. And once you control the source and you control the process, you have a good quality product. But the pricing has completely come down below what you
Yeah.
could achieve in any of the Western markets. And I
Yeah.
expect that business will grow
Yeah.
as a business.
Yeah. And when you look more broadly at the other work you're doing, are you seeing people asking different questions? Are you,
Yes.
we're getting this kind of impression that people want to reduce dependency on China. When I hear you talk about China, and when I talk to so many experts in this industry, China is quite often the right solution. And we have to keep sight of that. We have to remember that it's $4 trillion worth of manufacturing every year. And, we get excited about Vietnam, which is maybe 100 billion, or no, I think it's 40 billion, which is like 1% of the size. Are people saying we need to have more supply chain diversity? We need to have a China Plus strategy. How is it changing the way they think about their manufacturing?
It's funny. It's funny. We're having conversations with companies and organizations exactly around that. And they come on a call and like they'll start with, the China Plus strategy, and that's the topic. But like in the call, there's the real ask, which is, we can't send our engineers to China for various reasons, and we have our production in China. We have ramp coming up soon. We need engineers on the ground. Do you have engineers you can actually contract to us, or can you help us? What's the process? So we've developed solutions for so many companies in the last 3 months around feet on the street in China and experience in China, and then being able to manage the entire stack for them. So we've got a lot of inquiries around that. Whereas, yes, they're saying, hey, China plus one. You hear lots of that. But again, when it comes to it,
but the short-term fix,
it's a short-term fix, and they're not actually pulling the trigger on moving out of China, because the thing is, they can't travel to those geographies either. So it's the same thing, and it's really hard to, for them to think, okay, where's the alternative? And you've got to, how are you going to fund the raw materials? How are you going to, convince the manufacturers to actually build that capacity in those other geographies? That's a challenge. So we're seeing, I mean, the asks we're seeing are different, yes, for sure. But again, it's all around the same thing. It's, we want to deliver a product to a consumer anywhere in the world, and we want to do it in the shortest time possible. And
that feet on the street, the boots on the ground is hugely important to people at the moment. And the fact that you've got such a big team there is hugely valuable to so many different people. And I saw a report the other day from Gartner, and it was saying that 33% of companies were either reducing their dependency on supply chain dependency on China, or they were considering it. And I actually saw on LinkedIn, so I commented and I said, I bet it's 3% of people are doing it, and actually 30% are thinking about it, because it had been badly reported in the press as a third of companies are coming out of China. Absolutely not the case. I think people are thinking about it and they're reevaluating, but I don't see a lot happening at the moment. And actually, China's got probably per capita one of the lowest cases of COVID at the moment. They've, as you say, they got their masks on pretty quickly, and they locked down pretty quickly, and they've been able to open their facilities quickly. So I think that's, it's fascinating. But I do see this potential for a bit of a reset in the industry and a bit of a rethink of models. And I wonder if that plays into a couple of things: the idea of digital transformation, more so, giving that traceability, and the ability to stand up and to move things quickly, but also these, like yours, these asset-light models, these kind of manufacturing ecosystems that are a bit more dynamic than the traditional giant EMS company that we're used to seeing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, again, the other thing I think that's important that you have to keep in mind as well is when you look, I mean, when we look at, okay, if we're going to take a product and we're going to produce it in another location other than China, I look at the companies and the organizations we're going to work with. So you look at whether it's a small EMS in one of the Asian countries, and you look at how they're supported. When I talk about how they're supported, you look at the capital markets, you look at their valuations. And when you look, there is no question, China is the one market that really supports its manufacturing industry. Like the market cap of these companies in China that are unheard of in the Western world are 10x some of the biggest in the world. And they're not a fraction of the size when it comes to their volume, but they're just like, so the market, the Chinese capital market is,
just supports them.
Them. You look at the one that was announced during the week, last week, where Luxshare ICT acquired a factory from Wistron. And like most people don't even know who Luxshare is. When you look at the market cap, it's probably about, I would say it's somewhere sub 10 billion in sales. It's 55 billion market cap.
Yeah, unheard
That's
of in
probably
the EMS industry.
55 billion market cap is probably the combined market cap of the top 10 in the Western world.
Yeah. And
which is like,
that would give you like 100+ billion in sales, wouldn't it? To, you know, in revenue for that top 10 in Europe and the US. So yeah, it's a phenomenal difference, isn't it? And it's, you know, it's interesting when we see that shift. How do you feel about the, you know, obviously this has been a great test for your asset light model. How do you feel that model is really well placed now for the way the industry is shifting?
look, I think so. I mean, you know, in the Western world, I think a lot of like risk is associated with inventory. And, you know, one of the things that because of the, you know, if you look at the Western, you know, the large EMS companies, they're tied to the, you know, to the market. They're tied to like having strong forecasts.
Yeah.
And they sell because of that. They want to sell their capacity. Our brands that we work with, all they want to do is they want to commit to demand. They want to know what the demand is and they want to be able to commit to it. They want that flexibility. That's what we bring them. And again, you don't want to be tied to like capacity in a location that's dictated by an EMS company. You want to be, you want to be meeting demand based on consumer demand, and you want to have as little of the you know, risk exposure to inventory as possible. So we think that the asset light model, and it's the entire end-to-end stack. It's from the product development all the way through to the delivery to the consumer, and the concept to the consumer really is what we want to work with. And it has to be asset light. You can't make commitments that, oh, we're going to fill warehouses full of inventory in the US or in Europe or in Asia. It doesn't make any sense. If you can actually utilize you know, capacity of the couriers or the air freight, then you can get product to market faster and more impactful than you can if you're putting it through the, you know, traditional distribution
EMS model. Yeah, and when I look at that, I think, you know, a large EMS company is complex in itself. When you go to this asset light model where you've got multiple manufacturing partners and you're building an ecosystem, there's a even greater level of complexity there. Is the solution to that digitally driven? Is it software? Is software critical to what you do as a business?
Yeah, software is really important, and I think it's becoming more important. You can do, like, you can measure quality in line. You can, you know, you can actually, you know, the last mile delivery, the visibility into that is hugely important. And if you look at in today's world, consumers have been so well trained by these devices where you actually have a black dot moving on the product on a map showing where your package is at any one time, and people have become the expectation if they order a device or a product that is like $100, $200, $300, whatever, you know, that's a significant purchase for somebody, and they're going to wait, and they're going to have that, you know, they're going to be waiting for that out of box experience. So they you know, the anticipation is for them, time is good. You know, it's especially if it's in the wants category, not the needs category. They're waiting for that product that they've purchased, and they're going to want to make sure that, like, wow, they want to, you know, take it out of the box, make sure that out of box experience is great. And so, but the digital experience of that, you know, post production, pre-delivery, where it comes to them in their home, but then also post delivery, you know, so the interaction with that device, you know, if it's, you know, if they want to know, okay, any questions on it, the future of that, and it's something which we're very involved in, is like, you know, cutting out like a call center, because you don't need a call center, because anything that you want to know about the product is there in the box. You have a QR code that you scan that takes you to a site that explains everything. It has all the frequent questions. That's something which we develop because we have control of every step of the process for those customers. And they want to make sure, like, if, you know, when you walk into I was with a friend the other day who ran customer service for a large company, and he had like 700 customer service people in one of his offices, and every time the engineers from the company, the brand, came to visit, he said, look at this. He said, this is mistakes. Those 700 people are covering the mistakes that were made whether it's in the production or in the design or whether it's in the
Yeah.
product as it came. And he said, I love to, if we can eliminate those mistakes, and you can do it digitally today, so it's having a huge
Yeah.
impact. So now when you
Yeah.
open the box, there's a QR code, you scan the QR code and it takes you to all the
Yeah.
questions and the videos that you need in one place
Yeah.
for that product. That's
Yeah.
massive opportunity.
Yeah, and it's that digital experience from start to finish, and that might include a degree of mass customization at the front end in terms of how you select the product, and we're becoming more and more fickle and more demanding as consumers, and we want all that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's where it gets really into for us. If you look back, so 5 years ago, I would have been sitting in front of you telling, hey, I can make 1 million units a day of anything, right? And that's what it would have been. Today, I'm telling you, we can manage orders of 1 per day.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and what we mean by that is that so a consumer goes online and they order a product. We control that product down to orders of 1. So we have the serial code, we have the address, we have all of that data and that information. We have it in a way that we can actually customize the product for that consumer anywhere in the world. And we look at it, we're 3 hours from all the factories, we're 3 days from 90% of the consumers anywhere in the world that actually buy these products. So we control that experience. And any brand that says to us, that calls us and say, hey, we have a problem with a product, we say, where's the package? When was it delivered? Where was it delivered? Like within minutes, we can get to the bottom of it because we have that data, and that's what we do.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. And when I look at your business model, there are a few key things there, aren't there? There are the people with the expertise and the skills. There's the massive network, the impressive network that you've accumulated. There's great process which allows you to design and operate those supply chains, but that creates complexity. So bringing all that together with a digitally enabled software model is huge, and I think that makes it unique. And when I look at the way the industry is changing, I think that'll be part of it. Just again, a slight shift to one side. When I look at a potential dividend from the crisis, we were seeing a lot less emissions from factories because they weren't open. We were seeing a lot less emissions from travel. I haven't traveled for ages. You haven't traveled for ages. So there's a positive there in terms of climate change. I just saw yesterday that CES in Las Vegas is going virtual next year. So that's 150,000 people that won't be flying into Vegas. When you look at sustainability, and I know sustainability is really important to you, what does that mean to you as a business? And do you think there's an opportunity for a bit of a reset here and to actually bring that further up the agenda for people?
Oh, absolutely. I think, again, it goes back to like the difference between selling forecast and selling demand and it is huge because, forecast is built in, like just make it in large quantities and just get it into warehouses. And you forget, we think about the opposite. And we think about like, okay, only make it if there's a real demand for it and just build buffer stocks in different stages of the supply chain. But make less, not more is a massive focus for us and has been for years. You're right, sustainability is important. We've been publishing a sustainability report for 9 years now. And it's on our website. It's got the details. We report everything in there. And we find massive buy-in from everyone in the chain when you talk to them and explain the efficiencies and explain the benefits of it. And especially when it comes to the manufacturing base, because they can see like they can actually be more profitable businesses by thinking sustainable as well as doing the right thing. So we think that sustainability has a big piece.
I think it's really interesting, and I think to actually get people on board with that sustainability, they've got to know that cutting out waste isn't just about cutting out waste for the planet. It's waste that is costing them money and that they're throwing away. So there's an efficiency benefit, and if you can do that right from the design process, because you can get it right, because you can design for manufacturing, you can design for tests, you can design for logistics, and you can design for sustainability, then you can create you know, you can create a really good solution. Just on the lighter side of things, I'm guessing you're a pretty much dispersed team anyway, so you're kind of used to this Zoom world. How much has that changed during the crisis, and how easy was it to kind of switch mindsets? I know for some people, sending everybody home was kind of a big challenge, but for some of us working online wherever we are in the world, it comes fairly naturally.
Yeah, I mean, look, May 2001 was when we first brought the organization together. We brought everybody together, and it was 14 people, and we brought everybody to Cork. We had people from, I remember, Austin, Texas, California, Taiwan, Shenzhen, Ireland, and we had like everyone in a room together, and like we had all worked very closely together for many years, and many different people had met, but it was the first time we brought them together. And I remember it was when we signed up for Skype, and Skype became like the tool for us, and was so important. And so we've been doing it so long as a okay, get on a Skype call or get on a Microsoft Teams call or a Zoom call or whatever. So working remotely and the time zone challenge has always been something we've dealt with. And what happened was it forced us into like something which we had been practicing forever, but it forced us into a cadence that, okay, this is how we're going to run the business. And it's been fantastic. Within like days, we had people like on like Zoom calls, on Microsoft Team calls, and or WeChat calls, WeChat video calls, or whatever. So we had people working like on all the digital platforms like really, really fast, and it's been like fantastic. And I think that what it did as well is that it allowed people like to put more responsibility on people in their spaces to just make sure their piece was done correctly, and really that could and everyone understood that doing the work was one part, reporting the work was something else. So getting online and getting on these video calls with everyone and articulating, okay, this is what we see on the ground, or this is what we see from the customer. That was just a big acceleration. I think somebody said that who is the innovator, the greatest innovator in your organization? Is it the CEO, the CMO, or COVID-19? And COVID-19 has won every time.
Well, we both know that necessity is the mother of invention, and that's certainly creating that innovative environment, not just for the way we operate, but also for business models and all kinds of stuff. And I think we'll see more of that. What about you, Liam? How have you coped? I mean, like you say, this is the longest you've been in Ireland for some considerable time. You've probably not been able to go out to all the restaurants you normally go out to. Are you working 24/7, or are you binging shows on Netflix?
We were. I mean, we've always said in PCH, we operate from 8 in the morning in China to 6 in the evening in California, and it's 26 hours. So it's we always have people online, and we're always online. So it's interesting. We had our first second digital offsite on about last week, and it started at 11 p.m. at night here in Ireland, and finished at 3 a.m. But that was an unusual one. But again, when you are on the global time zones, you will work. And I think the thing is that people are working from home, so it made it easier for some and harder probably in other ways. But I think the company has really has really kind of adapted very well to it. The organization everywhere seems to have worked well for us. And I think a huge amount of the business is like, we've been trained historically as an organization, like that we had to, really communicate really well. We had to understand, if you're in the factory and you're at the coalface of the product being built, you had to communicate exactly what was happening to your team, your colleagues. And then on the other side, they really have to listen, and we had to listen really well to, okay, what is going on? And you had to know the questions to ask all the time. Okay, but okay, have we done this? Have we checked this? And that, it's, if we were starting from scratch, that would have been hard. But because we've been asking those questions for 24 years, that it's been, it's definitely, given us an advantage. And then it's bringing it all together. And Mike said this to me very early on. One of the things he said, look, hey, we're an orchestration company, and we orchestrate all the different parts. And it's like, how do you ensure you conduct that orchestra in a way that
and keep it
when to bring
harmony.
in what experts?
Yeah.
And he had massive insight into that, and was really, it was really helpful.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and as we were saying earlier, it was a real test for your business model, and the business model stepped up and showed it had the mettle to do it. But I see this whole process as being a real test for leadership, and a test for team, and a test for talent. And it sounds like your team has really kind of got behind what needs doing, not just from a business point of view, but from a what needs to be done for the world point of view, in terms of getting PPE and out to people. And I think that gives them a bit of an extra mission and a bit more impetus as well. Last question before we wrap up, Liam. When you look to your peers and to people that are managing supply chains in OEMs, people that are looking at their current EMS model and rethinking and thinking, okay, what's the future look like? What advice would you give? What have you learned from this crisis that you'd happily share with other CEOs?
So I think the big thing is that if you have an existing supply chain, it's one thing to deconstruct it and rebuild it somewhere else. But I think that what we've learned from a lot of the companies that have been successful so far is that they've been 90% focus on what's working, and then 10% look at what's possible in the future. And I think disrupting your supply chain just because people you read in the headlines that you need to change, you need to move. That's one thing, but having the real reasons to do it, and knowing what your consumers want is probably more important than being able to deliver on demand. Is been where we've seen a lot of success.
Yeah, and it's a time to be thoughtful, and it's a time to reach out to experts like yourselves, and figure out what the next stage and the next move for the industry needs to be. Liam, it's been great to talk to you. We could talk all day. We probably shouldn't, but thank you so much for your time, and thank you to everybody who's been enjoying EMS at Sea Level. Thanks a lot. Stay safe.
Thank you, Phil. Great.